So let's go ahead and get started. For this project, I'm going to start by coating the areas of my bangle with liquid Sculpey, where I'm going to stick the colored pieces and also where I just want some design to show. So basically, on this bangle, I plan to put my pieces of colored designs on these triangles and have these show as just part of the design, probably with maybe some rhinestones or something in the spaces. So I'm going to cover the triangles and these parallelograms with liquid Sculpey in gold. And for this process, I am going to make a little bit of a mess and just use my fingers. I'm not going to use a brush or anything because I really just want a smooth, thin layer over the wood. And I think it will be a little bit better control and thinner and like no brush strokes and stuff like that if I just go ahead and smooth it on with my finger. And in the triangle areas, mostly I'm just putting this layer here so that my colored pieces of white clay have a place to stick. But in my larger areas on the fronts, basically like what's the front of the bangle here, I'm going to make sure that the coating is nice and thick and doesn't have any wood showing through, because those are going to show in part of my final design. So as I finish up here, just a couple of notes. I do have my oven preheating right now because anytime I use liquid clay, I do want the oven ready as soon as I am, because I don't want it to drip and run and create puddles and stuff like that. So my oven's ready for me as soon as I'm done smoothing this out. And these are Sculpey metallics. This is the metallic gold, and they are nice and opaque. So I really do like the idea of covering something like wood with them, because then you can do like a box, you could do more bangles, you could do earrings, anything you want with this lovely opaque finish. And when it bakes, it's just, you know, your nice layer of clay over the wood. So I'm just going to make sure that these are sort of smoothed out, that it's covering all my little side pieces, but not the front and the back of the bangle. I have other plans for that. Probably Inca Gold or Gilder's Paste, something like that. But what I'm going to set it on a tile right now for baking, and then of course throw it in the oven right away so that the clay doesn't run off the wood onto the tile. Now to make a choice. Such choices to be made. These are coloring pages of magic transfer paper. They're called Color Me Magic Transfers, and I'm going to pick one to use for my design. So we have so many designs. We even have sugar skulls, anything you want. So I'm gonna pick one of the border strips, because we've done some that are long borders for you so that you have a lot of areas to put around something like a bracelet. That's a little warm still, straight out of the oven. So let me see, we've got that type of border. So many choices. You can see all of these at createalong.com. There's another one of tribal looking borders. Which one? I like this one a lot. This one's called Triple Tapestry, and I think it's my favorite design. So that's the one that I'm going to use. All right, I have released the border strip from its brothers by just cutting it close to the design with a pair of regular scissors, And now I'm going to transfer it face down onto a piece of white Primo. And this clay is rolled out to a number 4, which is fairly thin, on my machine. And this is how I prefer to do it. I burnish it onto the clay, face down again, and then I am going to wait about 10 minutes because I notice that if I can see some of the oil sort of leaching into the paper, then my paper will be ready to come off without losing the ink in the process, because the paper is water soluble. So the fibers in the paper are going to wash away when I take this to my sink and I put it under a gentle, very gentle dripping stream of running water. And I actually have a spray bottle, a little mister here, so I can show you how that process looks a little bit, and then I'll take it to the sink and get the rest of the paper off. So you just have to be gentle, don't rub it. You can do it twice. Usually that's what we do, is we gently release that fiber from the paper and then let it dry a little bit so that we can see if there's any like little extra fibers sticking up. Then you can wet it again and the second layer of fibers will come right off. So anyone who's having any trouble with magic transfer paper, that's the process that we'll tell them, is like, be gentle, don't rush it, don't push it, and certainly don't rub too hard, because then you'll just rub the ink off the clay. So 10 minutes, I'll be back and I'll start rinsing the paper off. This is a fun tool to have. It's called a mini mister. It's by Ranger, but you know, you can get them anywhere, a little misting thing. So I'm going to go ahead and wet the back of the paper, and you can see the color change, right? You can see the color just changed, and basically what I have done is I've wet the paper, and I'm going to show you the paper fibers start sliding off. Okay, so we're just loosening them up. What happens is they get really gooey. Okay, see that? And then you can pull the fibers right off. I'm not rubbing, I'm just kind of gently pulling my hand along. And the wetter it is, the more the paper fiber just wants to come right off. And it leaves the ink on the clay. Over here where you can see it's really bright, the fibers are gone and the ink is sitting on the clay. So here's the paper. With my design left on the clay. So I like to do this part just so I feel like I'm not putting all that paper down my sink, and also because it's a little easier to show on camera doing it this way, because I'm not going to be able to show you what it looks like when I'm doing it in the sink. But basically, look at all that paper that has come off. Now I can throw that away and go to the sink and finish the job, and just gently run a light stream of water over it and release the rest of that paper fiber down the sink. Okay, I'll be back. You will feel in the sink, you'll feel it when your clay is ready, because the paper fibers feel a little bit slimy, and of course you know what your clay feels like, you know, sort of tacky. So once the paper's gone, you'll have an idea. You'll probably feel it. So I'm going to carefully try to release this off my tile without distorting the design. It is a very thin piece of clay, so be careful. Because the next step is cutting and piecing little triangles onto my bracelet. So here's my bracelet. It's all out of the oven and not hot anymore. And basically, we're going to be making little triangles to fit on here. So I might even decide to make a little paper template for myself. I could even use some of this leftover magic transfer paper to do that, because I feel like that way I will be able to cut my little pieces out and I'll know what size they should be, generally speaking. So if I do that, then I have this and this. Let's see how close I am. Okay, so that's about the size. Triangle might be a little bit too long on one side here. Let's see. There we go. So that's a good triangle size that's going to fit in all my little areas. So I can start cutting up my clay. Into pieces. And then I'm going to be piecing these on. And this is why the liquid clay is already there, because now they'll stick right onto it. And when I bake it a second time, I'm going to have a really nice bond to the clay. So I just need to cut all the little pieces and stick them on to the bracelet. You can kind of stretch it and press it so that it fits your area, just like you would with any other piece of clay. But the cool thing is you've got the image on there, so and you don't have to worry now that it's dry. I'm not going to hurt it by pressing on it. Okay, so I'll be back when I'm done. All right, my bracelet is covered. And it looks really cool, and with this tribal pattern I have enough left over definitely to do a pair of earrings that would match with it. Or if you wanted to do some other stuff, like maybe do a strip going down the middle of each area, you could do that. Or cut a little square and stick it there. I might do that. I might, as I'm looking at it, I don't know. I've got to decide what I want to do to finish it. But there are so many possibilities, and because I covered it with the liquid clay first, I'm 100% confident that all these pieces I pressed onto the outer areas are going to stick just fine, and I'm going to go ahead and bake it for another half an hour and set all of the clay, cure it, and then you can just go nuts. You can paint the inner edge. I think I'm going to do Gilder's paste on the edges and leave the inside natural wood. So, because you know, when you put it on and off, it's the inside that you keep rubbing against. So I'll leave that natural. But you can get bangles like this anywhere. So go ahead and have a great time playing with your pre-printed magic transfer paper. So I went ahead and did that. I just cut up some of the scraps and pressed a piece of it into the center of each of those diamond shapes. And I think that makes it look a little more, I don't know what it does. It could be finished looking with just the gold, but I kind of like this look, so I'm going to go for that. And what do you do with all these scraps that are left? Well, you take a piece of scrap clay that you have lying on your table, get it conditioned for a second. You don't want to just throw this on the on a piece of clay that's really hard, because this was a little bit hard. Okay, and then I'm just going to go ahead and watch this. Put them on the outside of that ball of scrap. So you never have leftovers with polymer clay. There's always something that you can do to use up the pieces that you end up with and come up with something really cool. So here we are overlapping that ball of scrap clay that was lying there. I'm going to press them in with my fingers, and this is something that you can't do with very many other transfer methods, okay, because the magic transfer paper really sticks that ink into the clay. I'm going to roll a ball in both directions so that I have it nice and even, and it's going to press all those seams together. And now I have a matching piece of clay that I can use for a pendant, so I can have a matching jewelry set. So you can make yourself a pretty necklace to go with your bracelet. You can use the bigger piece that's left over to make a pair of earrings and go wild and just have a good time.